I'm Father Scott Vanderveer, and this is Profiles of Endurance. In 2018, a new restaurant opened in West Cooksaki, not far at all from our two parishes here in upstate New York. It was called Simone's Kitchen, and it was very clean and beautiful, and very simple. Just a serving line with some very good smelling fresh food, roasted vegetables, beautiful meats, and all sorts of homemade toppings. Simone's Kitchen was inspired by the Lebanese cuisine of Bashir Chedrawee's childhood, but he took it to another level by employing what he knew about science and about modern tastes into a concept he called Mediterranean bowls. These delicious combinations of protein and fresh greens and grains and delicious toppings. The food is simple and delicious and is contributing to a very happy and well-fed population here in our area. What a lot of people don't know is all of the backstory that went into the creation of Simone's Kitchen. And they don't recognize that actually Bashir was called away from what he originally thought God wanted him to do into this work for reasons that were mysterious, but were associated with healing. How can food be a part of our healing? And how does Simone's Kitchen and the Lebanese cuisine of Bashir's childhood play into that? Only by looking back at the story can we see God's fingerprints all over it. We now are joined by Bashir Chedrawee and have a chance to hear about how this incredible call led to full tummies in our community.
Thank you, Father Scott. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's begin with your childhood and about your time growing up. Talk to us a little bit about your family and about what it was like for you when you were young.
Sure. So my parents are Lebanese from the Mediterranean country of Lebanon. And I was actually born in the country of Ghana in Africa. And the reason for that is the Lebanese people who have endured a lot of hardships through the various wars and conflicts that go on in the Middle East, about 30 years ago, decided that they have to make a plan B to find a safe haven where they could raise their families and work and have a peaceful living. And so many families traveled outside of Lebanon into various parts of the world. Some families traveled to the United States, others to Africa, others to Australia, many to South America. And they landed somewhere and, as many Lebanese do, use their entrepreneurial spirits to start a business and create a living for their families. So my father's side of the family actually left Lebanon and went to Ghana, which is a country in Western Africa. And that's where my grandfather began his business, which eventually became a very successful sawmill and lumber yard. And so my father, being part of the family business, he married my mother. He returned to Lebanon to marry my mother. He was actually born and also spent a lot of time in Ghana as a child. He returned to Lebanon to marry a woman from his background, and that's my mother, Simone. And they returned to Ghana together to the family business, and that's where I was born.
It's so interesting for you to be born into such a different culture. So now you're living in the United States. You've got your roots in Lebanon, but an early childhood time in Ghana, West Africa. How old were you when you left Ghana?
I was around the age of 6 years old when I left Ghana. So my family had decided that they wanted to, seek out new opportunities due to some, political conflicts that were happening in Ghana this time around. And so my father had ties to the United States. He had spent some of his early adult years here, and we decided to, after a short stay we left Ghana, and after a short stay in Lebanon, we came to the United States in 1999. I was 7 years old, and that's when I joined the first grade here, and I've been here ever since.
How was your English at that time?
I had a very broken English. It was actually very confusing to many of my classmates because, I had a lighter skin complexion, but I actually spoke with a Ghanaian African accent. So it was definitely, something that was unusual, especially at such a young age. A lot of the kids didn't understand how to perceive that. And so it was a big challenge for me to actually fit in and have friends early on. Because it was a little sort of, I would say off-putting, but just a little unusual for people to experience somebody like me who spoke like me. My English was I could be understood. It's just I spoke a very broken English with a very heavy accent.
At that time in your life, where was home for you? Where did you consider when you would think of home, when you had roots in so many different places?
It's really interesting, Father Scott. I've never really, I've always taken up where I am currently living or currently stationed as my new home. I'm very adaptable in that way. Where if I end up somewhere and I decide that I'm staying there for a while, I start to consider it my new home. I don't feel a sense of home to any one particular location. I feel a sense of connectedness to all the locations that I've lived in and spent time in, but I don't necessarily have one place that I call home.
It's fascinating. That's fascinating for us, especially because you carry with you this deposit of Lebanese culture, and you're a bit a ambassador of Lebanon on 2 feet, even though that's not a country you've lived in for a long time. What about your personality or your family's life reminds you that you are Lebanese? Is there anything particular to the Lebanese people that you have discovered in yourself?
Yeah, I've always thought of the Lebanese people as very logical and rational individuals. When you have a conversation with a Lebanese person, oftentimes you feel like you're speaking at a relatively high level in terms of communication. I'm not sure if the language has something to do with it. I'm sure the culture has something to do with it. But the Lebanese people are very bright people, and I feel that there's many traits that the Lebanese people have that I also feel that I have and I can resonate with. The Lebanese are very adaptable people. They have sort of been through times of conflict and many different changes throughout the years, and have had no choice but to adapt to the current climate. And so that is sort of one trait that I feel I have because I am Lebanese. The Lebanese people are very entrepreneurial. It's very. I'm always very surprised because whenever you meet somebody who's Lebanese, whether it's here in the U.S. or other countries, they oftentimes they're business owners, and they've sort of started. They're self-led people who aren't necessarily working for another company, but creating their own thing. So I feel like as far as being Lebanese, those are the traits that have been sort of passed on by that culture to me.
Yeah, great traits. And it's true. I think a lot of us, if we think back to the families and the individuals we've known who are Lebanese, so many of them are business owners. That's so true. One thing that's interesting, I think a lot of Americans, because we live in such a big country that takes up a whole continent, it can be easy for us to not kind of be clear on the details of a particular culture that's far away. I think a lot of us, when we think of Lebanon situated in the Middle East, we vaguely know that it's an Arab country, so we may assume that everybody who is Lebanese is also Muslim. Talk to us a bit about that. What is the spiritual and the religious makeup of Lebanon? Are the Lebanese people all Arab? Are they all Muslim?
Yeah. So in terms of the religious makeup, Lebanon really has a big mix of different sects and different religions that reside, but the majority are between Muslims and Christians. In fact, Lebanon, for a very long time, was a majority Christian country, and I think at this point it's more of a 50-50, 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. And I believe, based on the Constitution, the Lebanese president has to be Christian. Yes, but the sort of the next level down, I'm not sure if it's a prime minister or I wouldn't be a prime minister, but the sort of next level down has to be a Shiite Muslim, and then there's another position that has to be a Sunni Muslim. So what you see is that it's a country that has these two religions. I don't want to say living in harmony, because there has been a lot of conflict, but the very fabric of the politics is a mix between the two, and sort of an acceptance on some level that both of these religions exist in one place and are going to be sort of managed and together. So, in terms of the Christian makeup, you do have a big portion of Maronite Christians and a big portion of Orthodox Christians. Maronite being the Lebanese or Syrian version of Catholicism. So the Maronites follow and are led by the Pope in the same way that the Roman Catholics are here and around the world. And then the Orthodox are the second sort of major sect of Christianity. And I've been exposed to both, being that my father is a Maronite Christian and my mother is an Orthodox Christian. Fascinating.
And now, for those people listening locally, there is a Maronite Catholic church in Watervliet in our area. So there are, and I know personally, I've gotten to be friends over the years with some of the priests who've come from there, and all of them have been from Lebanon. So that's fascinating. How about your mother's church? Is there an Orthodox Lebanese Christian community somewhere locally?
There's St. George's Church in Albany. So that's an Antiochian Orthodox church. It's located right off of, I believe, South Pearl Street in Albany. And so I've attended that church a fair amount in my childhood, and I also attended the Maronite Church in my childhood as well.
Wow. Fascinating roots. My goodness. And your parents have maintained that tradition through their time in Ghana and into their time into the United States. That's part of the deposit they brought with them.
Oh, for sure. Just like many other people, in Lebanon, religion plays a very big and central part of people's lives, and their identities are tied in with their religion. So if you're a Maronite, or if you meet a Maronite or an Orthodox Lebanese person, you'll find out shortly after which of those two sects they prescribe to, and because it is very important and close to their heart there. And there's many traditions, many celebrations that each one of those sects has. So if you go to Lebanon, into a Maronite area, you'll see many sort of celebrations of different saints that the Maronites recognize, and those also happen many times throughout the year, and the same for the Orthodox areas as well.
Excellent. It's a rich tradition. I know for those of us who have any connection to those communities, it's a very strong and robust faith. Another thing that's very, very rich and robust coming from Lebanon is the cuisine. I think a lot of people who've experienced Lebanese food would say it is among the best in the world. It is incredible food, so nourishing, so tasty, and really healthy. What's the secret to Lebanese food being as good as it is? What is the magic of Lebanese food?
So, first of all, I just want to say that I am completely in agreement that the Lebanese cuisine is one of the sort of best cuisines, or my favorite at least, out there. And I try not to be biased in any way. I don't. It's not that I'm Lebanese or that it's because I identify with the culture. I just think I'm trying to be objective as possible. It's that the flavors and how nutritious the diet is at the same time, it's frankly unmatched. And I've had the opportunity to try many cuisines from around the world, and I find it to be the best out there. And I think it's because the focus is on very simple ingredients. Oftentimes, there are recipes that sort of maybe overcomplicate or add an abundance of ingredients. Many of them don't mix and match well, when in fact you find that if you just have very few simple ingredients that are grown right from the earth, and you combine them and add spices and herbs and lemon, you find that that's all you need to create something really delicious, but also really nutritious. And the Mediterranean diet is a very simple one that's based on fruits, vegetables, fish, various spices, herbs, and of course, olive oil. And that's a similarity that all of the countries of the Mediterranean have. It's just that the region there in the Mediterranean climate allows for an abundance of different vegetation that are delicious when they're served together and combined together. And every single Mediterranean country puts their own twist on it.
And it's miraculous. I first encountered a Lebanese food restaurant when I lived in Albany 15 years ago. I lived in the Center Square neighborhood of Albany, and there was a Lebanese restaurant there that I have since come to learn was one run by your family. You have a restaurant family background in your life. Can you talk to us a little bit about your parents' family business? Where did that idea come from, and what kind of business or businesses did they run?
Sure. So when we came to the United States, for a while, my parents worked at a local Italian restaurant, just getting our feet on the ground and establishing ourselves locally, until that they were able to put together enough money to open their own Lebanese restaurant. And so that was Al Baraki, which they opened, I believe, sometime around 2005, 2006. And the original location was actually in downtown Troy. And there, my father and my mother worked together to create a menu that was, had all the traditional Lebanese dishes that people from around the world have known to come and to love and to know. And they worked on that business together for many years. They opened a second location, small sort of pickup window location in Albany on Lark Street. And then eventually, unfortunately, due to a fire that had to close down, there was a fire in the restaurant next door, which affected that business. So they ended up closing that business down. And my father actually sold the business in Troy to one of his long-time team members. And that became known as Beirut. Many people know Beirut, Lebanese restaurant in downtown Troy. And ultimately, he opened another location, Al Baraki location, in Cohoes. So he had the two locations, the Albany and Troy one, and Albany was disrupted due to the fire. He sold Troy and then opened up Cahoes. So most people are familiar with Al Baraki Cahoes, which is more of a larger sit-down restaurant that my parents ran for several years together, and they had a lot of success. But unfortunately, due to the economy around the 2012 time, they also had to close that location down as there was a drastic decline in business. And so, but during that time, I did have some experience, a lot of experience actually helping them there. I was younger, and so I wasn't involved in any critical parts of the business, but I was there in terms of service and cleanup and waitressing and sort of just helping with the back end stuff. So that was sort of my first time being exposed to the restaurant industry and sort of seeing the inner workings of it.
So that means you learned how hard the work is. Owning and running a restaurant is known. It's famous as being a really hard work job. You work all the time.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. It is it can be a very rough and brutal industry. You know, for one, it's oftentimes, we get degrees or certifications to enter into a particular trade or profession. The restaurant industry isn't one that requires that sort of thing. So many times, many people will get into something like this, just not really approaching it as a profession or a trade. And unfortunately, many times what we have is a lot of restaurants that end up finding out after opening how much of a struggle it is on the back end to run something like this. And it requires just as much sort of discipline and study as any other profession that you can take up. And so I was exposed to that myself. My parents did such an amazing job figuring it out on their own when I was younger. And I took a lot of sort of example and lessons from that experience, simply being in that environment and just having a big picture view of how things operated ended up helping me when I opened up Simone's Kitchen. And then I was able to sort of build on all of those experiences in addition to what I brought to the table as well to create something that was that I feel has a very well sort of put together and run back end, which is extremely important when you have a restaurant. It's just thinking of all the inner workings, all the various components.
While you were growing up and watching your parents in the restaurant business, what were your thoughts about your future? What were your plans and dreams for what you wanted to do?
So when I was younger, I was open to pursuing actually many different things. For a while had an interest in the sciences, and then I switched for a little while, and I wanted to pursue something in the arts. I was actually thinking about going to film school. I really liked, shooting short stories, video recording short stories, and making short movies. And in high school, I actually won a few competitions for short movies, and just very simple things that we did in cinematography class. But I found that it was something that was really interesting to me and that I did well. So when I first started college, I actually took a mix of arts and science classes, but that's where I learned that my true passion was in the sciences, which is ultimately what I ended up focusing on.
And when you went to study, what was your focus in the sciences?
So my first year in college was more of a, like I said, just sort of testing the waters and all these different subjects, everything from the arts to music to biology and chemistry. And what I found is that I started to focus more on the biology. That sort of was the most interesting to me, and ultimately decided to pursue a degree in biochemistry and neuroscience from the University of Albany. So I graduated 2017 with a bachelor's in biochemistry and a bachelor's in neuroscience. And from there, I had taken a year off to apply to medical school. So generally, for those applying to medical school, they graduate with their bachelor's degree, and they will take a year off to take their entrance exams and apply to various medical schools. Just medical schools application is very involved. There's several layers of application. You go to interviews, just like a job interview. Sometimes you can have several interviews in a row. It's a very sort of rigorous process. So after graduating in 2017, that's what my plan was for the next year. So I was actually began applying to medical school. I actually had some interviews scheduled, and that's when the idea of Simone's Kitchen came about.
So talk to us about that. You were looking at medical school, which would have been we all have an imagination about what that path looks like. You described the intensity of the interview process, and then you do a deep dive. And then Simone's Kitchen as an idea came up. How do you draw the line between the sciences and Simone's Kitchen?
Sure. So Simone's Kitchen actually began during that year when I was applying to medical school. My mother approached me about opening up a small restaurant. She had always had a love for cooking, and I was fortunate to have that throughout my childhood. Like I was mentioning before, very simple, nutritious, nourishing recipes that require very little effort to actually create something delicious. So I always had a love for the Mediterranean food. And when my mother approached me about starting her own restaurant, it's really sparked my interest. So I started working on that on the side with her. So I started first learning and educating myself about the restaurant industry. Despite my father having the restaurant for a long time, I was never really involved in the sort of higher level stuff. So I learned what I could online, and then I started to develop the concept that's Simone's Kitchen, which is a fast casual. It's known as a fast casual concept. That is sort of the sector of the restaurant industry, and I worked with my mother to develop the menu. The menu is based on, is Mediterranean inspired. A lot of the recipes are our own take on traditional Lebanese dishes, and some of them are original dishes that we make using various Lebanese flavors, spices, herbs, and ingredients. And ultimately, we created this array of recipes that combine really well when put together into what we serve here with our salads and grain bowls. And so in the process of doing this sort of on the side, it started to occupy more and more of my time. And a few months in, I started to realize that I was actually very passionate about this thing in the same way that I was passionate, for the same reasons I was passionate about medicine, which is being able to provide a source of health to others at a time where it's so easy, how unhealthiness is so easily accessible. And so my focus shifted onto Simone's Kitchen, and Coxsackie was actually my mother's find when she was one time she took a trip, I believe, to Kingston, and she came off on this exit, and she noticed this empty location in a strip mall. And when she peeked in, she called me immediately, and I came down and checked it out. And I thought it was sort of a perfect little location that we could afford with this, very sort of low capital startup. And so we opened our doors in April of 2018. It was my mother, myself, and a family friend on dishes. And
that's amazing. Your mother and you and a family friend doing the dishes.
Yes.
Oh.
And that was the beginning. And we had a lot of success very early on. The response was great. We had a buzz in the community, and we also had a lot of guests that would come from neighboring communities to visit us. And I always say, you can be a crazy person with an idea, but the way you really know if you have a great idea is when you see the feedback that others are giving you. And so when I saw the feedback and sort of the impact that we were having on others, just purely providing that experience of delicious food, something completely different, something that exposed people to flavors or ingredients that they would have maybe never otherwise had, that was something that was very pleasurable for me. And to know that we had put the effort to make these meals not just flavorful but incredibly healthy in a way that could possibly, actually definitely, convince people to give us a try instead of perhaps McDonald's or some other sort of alternative that wouldn't be the healthiest for them. That for me was, a huge sort of shift in my thinking of how I could sort of impact the community and the world through what I decided to do in the future. And so that's how Simone's Kitchen really became a passion for me. And ultimately, I decided to withdraw my applications from medical school and focus fully on Simone's Kitchen.
Now, Bashir, I have to say, for somebody who has eaten at your establishment regularly since you opened in 2018, it's so interesting. I think there's probably some listeners that are thinking, what is this magical food? Can you talk to us? I've never had Lebanese food. Is it anything like Italian food? Is it like Greek food? And, just to give an example of what it's like to go to Simone's Kitchen in this, as you said, fast, casual concept, you're able to go to this line and everything is right in front of you. And it's all made fresh. It's all, clearly homemade food. And you get to start off with choosing, do you want some rice in the bottom of your dish? Do you want some whole grains like quinoa, or do you want greens? And then you pick a kind of protein, and whatever you choose is going to be it'll be a Lebanese kind of chickpea patty, falafel, which is so delicious and flavorful and a little bit indulgent because it's fried, but you can tell that this is not fried the way, French fries would be. It's a very different kind of rich, light taste, but you could also have these other forms of protein, the chicken or the beef. And then all of these toppings are there, and they are so delicious. And I'd like to ask. I've got an example of the deliciousness. I'd like to ask you to describe to us what garlic sauce is for those who don't know. But before we go there, I would like to just say that you'll see now in our community corrections officers from the local prisons on their lunch break getting Simone's Kitchen, getting whole grains and greens and fresh, like toppings made with tomatoes and eggplant and herbs and all these things. And if you think about over the course of someone's work life, if a corrections officer has for lunch these kind of Lebanese dishes over the course of a career, instead of getting, pick up fried chicken, pizza, the typical fast food stuff that's out there, just think of how less often they would need to go to a physician. They'll be so much healthier. So
absolutely.
And you're seeing a lot of people from those kind of professions, aren't you? You're seeing corrections officers who, when we close our eyes and think about that profession and the high stress of the job, you don't imagine that a corrections officer finds it easy to eat healthy food during the workday.
No.
But Simone's makes it possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's nothing more gratifying than realizing that you could be having that impact on somebody's life. For two reasons. One, you're providing health to others. You're providing it in a format that's easily accessible, and you're doing it in a way that's really flavorful, right? Oftentimes, if the healthy food is not prepared properly, a lot of times it's unattractive for people, especially when you have something that is so highly palatable, like fried food and a lot of the other sort of alternatives that are so easily accessible and affordable as well. So we try to cover all of those bases. And there's nothing that is more gratifying than seeing that you're providing that option that otherwise wouldn't be there. But also, it's gratifying to see people open their minds to new experiences and new things that they wouldn't have otherwise. There's, healthy food and natural ingredients oftentimes looked at as things that are not tasty, and also exposing yourself to another culture's food is sometimes people can be very apprehensive about that. And so being able to sort of open people's minds up by allowing them to try something new and to know that what they're having is also giving them the nourishment that they need to improve their lives and to go on and do the things that they want to do in their lives with the best state of mind and the best health, is those two things are extremely gratifying.
Oh, it's true. It's making a big difference in the lives of so many people. And of course, being an entrepreneur, you are providing jobs. I mean, many people that I know as a priest in the community either work for you or have family members that work for you. And I just was speaking to somebody today about the fact that I was going to be speaking with you. And they said, our daughter worked for Simone's Kitchen when she was in high school. And I can't emphasize enough how wonderful that place was for building skills and how patient they were with her, and what a great mentor Bashir is in working with his employees. So you're able to make a serious impact. So take me back. I was extolling the virtues of garlic sauce. This is something that everyone that I know talks about all the time when they talk about your food. It's a great example of how something can take a dish and just bring it to a whole new level. I usually ask for extra or double garlic sauce when I'm making my choices in your line. But garlic sauce, I've learned, is one of those examples of something that has to be made with great skill, but at the same time is part of that simplicity of Lebanese food. You would think when you taste it that it has 20 ingredients in it. But talk to us about what garlic sauce is.
Sure. So the garlic sauce, or they call it creamy garlic, is a garlic aioli. It's called toum in Lebanon. And it's one of the options on our line. You did a great job explaining the various steps of creating a meal here. So you start with a base of grains or greens, and you add a source of protein. Then you decorate with a variety of vegetable medleys, and then you have your dips and your dressings. And so the creamy garlic is one of our dips. And what it is it's an emulsification of garlic and oil to create this really creamy, garlicky, and lemony, almost mayonnaise-looking dip that oftentimes people are surprised to learn is completely vegan. And what you said is correct. Traditionally, making this toum is actually not as easy as throwing a few ingredients together. The emulsification, which is the process of combining water and oil in balance, because as we know, when we combine water and oil, they separate. But if you combine them in a particular way or with other particular ingredients, you can create this balance between the two that creates a very fluffy consistency and also a very tasty, sort of crispy garlic flavor. And we've had people who have actually come in here, and upon learning that we have just served the last of our garlic dip, have turned around and walked out of the door, only to return the next day to have their serving of garlic. So there is a good number of people who that garlic makes their meal, and they don't care about the effects on their breath. They'll just pop a fresh one. No problem at all.
No problem. It's worth it.
Absolutely. There's a customer that comes in almost every day and gets a tub of the garlic with pita bread and just eats the two together.
Oh.
Yeah.
Blessed be that person.
Yeah.
Now I've got to say, but this typifies the experience at Simone's Kitchen. When you go there, you are tasting something that is so clean in its simplicity. You know, this is an emulsification. It's a garlic and oil and water and lemon emulsification, and yet so you're tasting something simple, but like you said, there is great skill that is made that goes into making that. Nobody could necessarily do that on their own. It was I don't know if it was Lebanese grandmothers or grandfathers who were the typical ones to make the toum, but you're having something that was crafted with great skill, was confected in the minds of these brilliant grandmothers back in Lebanon, but that is something you can rely on every day to be consistent and delicious and make your food, bring your whole dish to the next level. It's the magic.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, so what we've done is we've taken these traditional dishes of the Mediterranean that are prepared from scratch, prepared with care, with simple ingredients, and brought my experiences from the sciences to create recipes and protocols and methods of preparing these things in a way that is consistent, in a way that we can manage to serve 100 or 150 meals a day of this particular thing that is oftentimes takes a lot of time and effort and hands-on to get done. And so we've developed sort of modern techniques for creating these things at the volume that we need to, but also, maintaining and preserving the freshness of the recipes and the love and care that goes into creating them.
How incredible. I love that. I love that this is such a fusion of all of your previous experiences. It's almost as if you could not have created Simone's Kitchen a day before that day in April 2018 because you needed a whole lifetime up until that point of experiences and skills in order to do what was needed in modern times to make this possible.
Absolutely. And, Father Scott, that brings up a really good point, which is that, Simone, you can reproduce another restaurant or another business that is similar in scale, similar in cuisine, similar in format. But the truth is that anything that you develop or create, or any person develops or creates, does have their fingerprint, their special experiences and backgrounds that only they can put together in the way that they do. And so I feel that this sort of realizing that every person can sort of leverage their own particular and combination of experiences to sort of create something for themselves is something that's really important, that really should be instilled more in school, because no two people live the same lives, and that means that you can create something that nobody else can, in essence.
I love that. I love it. This place would look very different if the creator of it did not have a background in the sciences.
Absolutely.
It's so right on. That's so true. Which means that every single one of us in our creative endeavors is doing something that no one else could do. And that's not just because we're all, snowflakes, air quotes intended. It's because we literally were made by our creator to have a combination of skills and influences that cannot be duplicated by anyone else.
Yes, and I would like to add, too, and give some credit to my business partner, Sean. So about 6 months into starting Simone's Kitchen, when I decided to make the switch over to focus all my effort on growing this business and this project, I knew that I needed a good partner to do this with. So I reached out to my very good friend from college, Sean, who took the same coursework that I did, and we both actually worked together throughout college, graduated with the same 2 majors, and was also applying to medical school. And I called him up when I made the decision, and he came down and saw what I was doing here and he was convinced. And so he did the same exact thing that I did and joined me. And that's who I've been growing this business with since then. We've expanded from our first location, actually taking over the adjacent space in the strip mall we're in, broken down the wall and created a nice seating space, which has yet to be used as much as we would have liked because of coronavirus, but that's okay. There's a lot of potential for the future. And so my business partner also brings that science, that experience from his life as well, and his background, and also the sciences as well, into what we're doing today. So this place has a lot of his influence as well.
Oh, it's beautiful. And to see the two of you in action together is really, there's a lot of strategizing and building a better mousetrap, constant improvements that go into watching the synergy that you two have. It's very cool. It's very cool. So Bashir, we watched, all of us in the community here watched as you opened in spring of 2018, and we watched the business grow. We watched it become, just kind of like common parlance in our town to talk about Simone's Kitchen. Oh, did you get Simone's today? We usually just ask each other, if you're going up to Simone's, can you get me a small bowl? We'll say that all the time. That's just well known. We watched as the wall between your store and the store next door came down and you expanded, and we watched that all happen. So how remarkable that it was just 2 years after you opened your business that you faced a challenge that none of us could have imagined. Coronavirus came. You were 2 years into growing this business, and everything shifted. It was at that time it became illegal, to gather people indoors. It became impossible to do business as usual. What did you do?
So, the coronavirus really came as a surprise. The effects came so quickly and as a big surprise to everybody, and especially to the restaurant industry, which suffered a lot as a result of having to shut down, which by all means was the right thing to do to stay safe. But at the same time, it meant that a lot of the business was cut at these restaurants, sometimes by 80-90%. And so we actually experienced that very early on. We experienced the effects of coronavirus with about an 80% reduction in sales.
80%.
Yes, that was sort of as soon as the mandate went into place, that restaurant dining areas were shut down. We saw a very big reduction in business. Even though a majority of our business was takeout, we found that people were scared. They didn't want to leave their homes. They were uncertain about the future. So we were very quick to sit down, brainstorm, and pivot into really what we've become today. A lot of the steps that we took early on saved our business. So the first thing we decided to do was to start offering delivery. We found that people really preferred to stay home, safe, and sort of isolated. And so we decided that we would go to them. So we immediately decided that we were going to start offering delivery. Myself and my business partner, Sean, were actually responsible for taking the deliveries, and we enabled it on our online ordering system. And then we started advertising it in Coxsackie, in the neighboring towns, and immediately we saw our business start to pick up, but not to the capacity that it was originally. We also started promoting a lot of the steps that we were taking to be safe so that we could put people's minds at ease. Our business is based on the well-being of others to begin with. We have high sanitary standards to begin with. And so we were actually the first business locally to start wearing masks even before it became a mandate, when it was still weird to see people with masks. Now we see each other wearing masks, and it's normal. We don't think a thing of it. But back then, if you saw somebody wearing a mask, sometimes you would think they were sick or there was something wrong with them.
That's right.
And it was sort of off-putting. So what I did was I had masks made that were sort of a tan and dark tan color, so that they wouldn't be very much of an eyesore, or so that they wouldn't draw attention to them. And our team became the first business locally to start wearing these masks. And this was all part of a system of things that we did to show the community that we were going to take whatever steps we needed to make sure that they were safe when they came here or when they ordered from here. We published a page on our website about all the different steps that we were taking inside our walls to make sure that their food was safe, to make sure that our team members were not sick. Our team members started taking daily temperature checks just to make sure that nobody was infected and working with a fever. And then we took additional steps at disinfecting very frequently our space. We actually researched and found the best disinfectant that would be effective against coronavirus, but that we knew we wanted to use so frequently that was also safe to our team members, because a lot of times we think that we're being protective by disinfecting and using these chemicals to kill off coronavirus, but we also don't realize that a lot of these artificial chemicals are just as harmful. And so we found a new main disinfectant that we still currently use to this day, that is safe on humans, but just as effective as the most effective traditional disinfectant out there on coronavirus. We started ventilating our space a lot more, and we're actually still doing things today to sort of continue to adjust and pivot in the way that the restaurant industry has moved to, I think, for the long term, which is a lot of takeout business. And so those changes actually allowed our business to not only return to normal, but to actually increase and improve. And we broke sales records since coronavirus has started, and we've continued to see that increase in business being sustained throughout the entire time.
And that excites me so much, because a couple of things are coming together here. One of them is another leadership team that did not have the background in science probably would not have been able to do all that research and to know how important that was. I feel like there's another example of your medical and scientific background coming in here. But I also have to say, because people were afraid of contamination, they chose Simone's kitchen because it was clear that you were on top of it. And so people who may not have chosen Lebanese food before that time, but it was one of the only options they felt comfortable with, then had a chance to fall in love with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. I think it opened the opportunity and gave the opportunity for others to who hadn't tried our food to try us and to become exposed to this cuisine for the first time. And the great thing too, which is something that we marketed as well, is that healthy food and a good nutritious diet is the key to a healthy immune system. And so eating something like the Mediterranean diet is going to be productive for warding off illness and staying healthy. So not only were we being careful in disinfecting, creating a safe space that didn't harbor any illness or disease, but we're also putting out a product that helped people build the defenses to fight off any disease or illness that might come their way.
I think you're making such a beautiful point, and I think we have to be honest about something here, that our typical American diet, as we know, is too high in sugar and in carbs and fat, and is not as healthy as a typical Mediterranean diet. A lot of us don't know or haven't figured out how to have a change in that's meaningful enough that it can make a big influence on our lives. And so what I'm getting at is we didn't hear a lot of people during the height of coronavirus telling us to strengthen our immune systems. They were telling us instead to stay away from the virus because we wouldn't be able to match it. And there's obviously great wisdom in saying stay away, keep social distance. We have to break the chain of contagiousness. But at the same time, nothing makes you safer than having an immune system that could even come in contact with the coronavirus and fight it off.
Absolutely. And, as someone with a science background, Father Scott, I really saw that was a sort of a big opportunity that the government really missed out on, because this was a time where people were primed. They were ready to do whatever it took to be safe and incorporate habits and skills in their life that could outlive and outlast the coronavirus and make them healthier for the future. And, unfortunately, there are many things that our government did correctly, that our government did to try to keep us safe. But there was also this sort of strengthening your immune system and taking the steps to make sure that your body was strong was an opportunity that I felt was missed by the government. And that's something that we tried to put out there instead. Frankly, the coronavirus itself, we saw, was, as with any disease, but especially with the coronavirus, was most detrimental for those with weaker immune systems, the older population as well as those that were immunocompromised. In fact, the coronavirus is deadly because of the fact that the hyper sort of immune response that comes from an unhealthy immune system that is elicited by the coronavirus is what's causing the damage to the heart and the lungs of those that suffer the most severe bouts of it. And so strengthening the immune system should have been the very first thing that our leaders did. And so because we saw that was missing, we really saw an opportunity to put that out for the public, which is why we were very, persistent with our marketing of the effects of healthy on the immune system. And we'll continue to do that for as long as we exist.
I love it. And I just think it is so wonderful that the public has responded the way that they have, and that you've been rewarded with success for spreading a healthy lifestyle and promoting this sense. It's such a good example of you using what could be or could have been a career in professional traditional Western medicine, but instead coming at it a different way. It's almost as though you've chosen to have the vocation of a healer, but to do it in nutrition instead of pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yes. Thank you for putting it that way. That's how I've come to see it too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So this is a good time maybe for us to talk about some exciting announcements that I think you're getting ready to make. A lot of folks know that Simone's Kitchen is in a growth period right now, but it sounds like you've got some new initiatives that are very exciting. Can you? I don't know if you can tell us all of them, or we'll take as much as we can. What's some of the growth that's going on for you right now?
Sure. So, we have we have a big vision for Simone's Kitchen, what we hope to accomplish in the future. We have a very long list of things, but sort of the most proximate one is our second location, which is going to be opening in Schenectady later this year. About 4 weeks ago, we had a press release, and we announced that officially for the first time. This is going to be in downtown Schenectady.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're very excited. We're very excited about, bringing this food into the capital region, bringing our concept and our influence into the capital region, and especially in a place like Schenectady that is up and coming right now, a very sort of close-knit city, which is sort of hard to come by, and working with really great people. The Spurgeon partners are this young brother and sister team of local business owner and / developers, and we're working with them on a location that we're building from scratch to the exact specifications that are going to help us run the best business possible. So it's exciting. It's going to be our flagship location in the capital region. And of course, our vision is to take Simone's Kitchen to many different places. But right now, our full focus is on making an entrance into that area and really hammering down our concept and our operation in a way that we feel very comfortable and confident with taking beyond 2 locations.
Ah, that's so exciting. It's so exciting. And you know what I'm realizing is what I'm hearing out of you, the image that comes to mind is that you and Sean are just jackhammers at the concept that you've created. You know what I mean? You have a concept that is smart and healthy and based on good science and based on good business, and you are just jackhammering at it every day. Every day you're working at it.
Well, thank you so much. A big portion of this is that we're sort of leading our decision making based on what's going to create value for the community, for the people that work in our business, for the people that come into our business, for the people that we source from. Our business, Simone's Kitchen, is here to create value for others. And we want to be a place that people are excited and proud to show to the visitors and relatives when they come into their community. We want to be a place that helps our team members grow, whether they want to grow within the business or whether they have other aspirations and passions. This is going to be a place that adds to those things and helps them grow personally and professionally. And we want to be a place that supports other businesses where we source from, other businesses that try to do the right thing and also create value for others. And that very value-driven method, that very value-driven approach that we have is really what keeps us motivated to continue to work as hard as we are on Simone's Kitchen. Because without that, frankly, I wouldn't want to have this business. If we're not a place that's creating value for the community and for the people that are within the business and that are being influenced by the business, then this is not a business that I would want to have. So as long as we exist, as long as Simone's Kitchen is functioning and alive, that's going to be true.
I love it. I love it. You're basing everything on such strong intention and such really clear principles. It's beautiful to talk to somebody whose vision is very clear. Even if it's not a vision that I've ever heard before or have known to share, when you speak with a conviction that I think draws us in. I think all of us want to be part of something that is going in a direction. I think that's one of the things that causes me to be involved in religion and spirituality, because I know that creation and evolution is going in a good direction and it's directed by a higher power. And so I want to be a part of that. And it feels very much like that dynamic is at work in your call. I hear it.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Father. And that's not to say that there isn't uncertainty involved in the decisions that we make or in how we're going to accomplish what it is we want to accomplish, because there is, but it is that vision that fuels you to continue going. And then what you realize is, even though you don't always have the answer, as long as you continue to grow and keep your eyes and your ears open, that answer will come to you and you'll figure it out. And that's something that I've realized over and over again since the time I've started Simone's.
Oh, I love it. So there's some young people I'm sure that are listening, that are hearing, and they're not that far behind you. May I ask, what's your age right now, Bashir?
28.
You're 28. Is Sean also 28?
Sean's 27.
He's 27. So the two of you in your late 20s, all this momentum going. You're not kids anymore, but you've still got tons of youth on your side. There might be somebody who's 10 years younger than you right now hearing this, and they want to take a page out of your book. What would you say to a young person who hears the way that your path has taken you and wants to be a part of this or wants to somehow emulate that? What would you say to your younger self, the 10-year ago version of you?
So let me just say that I'm not sure that I definitely don't have a fully written and completed book. I think I'm still in the first few chapters here. But one thing that I can say is that I have learned a lot in those first few chapters. I think I would circle back to the idea that we just spoke about, which is that as long as you have a vision and you're value driven, that is the reason that you're pursuing what you're pursuing has real meaning and resonates with you on a deep level, then you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to keep your eyes open and keep going, and eventually things will fall in place. But what I would say is keep your mind open. Don't keep your vision fixed. Don't keep your eyes fixed on the same outcome or the same vision. Oftentimes what will happen in the process is you'll realize something new or a better way to do things, or you'll realize an entirely new vision that you build on your older one. And so make sure that you are ready to, not ready to, or you're open to making those changes, or following that new vision that has come about purely on your way, on your path, and while you're learning all of these new things. So be adaptable, be ready to change and to see things in a new light. And ultimately, as long as you're being honest with yourself and you're doing things for meaningful reasons, the outcome will be great.
I love it. I love it. Out of curiosity, something is urging me to ask this now. Your parents, the name for their dream that they realized was Al-Baraki. What is the meaning of that?
Al-Baraki is, wow, they would be very upset with me if I'm drawing. It means, I believe, goodness. Or bringing goodness on somebody or something.
It's, yeah. It sounds like that. I mean, I'm thinking of, I don't know Lebanese, but I know that those sounds, Baruch in Hebrew, and Barak in some of the languages of the Mideast. It feels like those are always words around goodness and blessing. All of those words that make that sound are about goodness and blessing.
Absolutely. And you have A-L, which is the prefix meaning Allah. So maybe blessings of God or goodness from God.
It just strikes me that that your parents had this vision and they passed it on to you, but you couldn't, because you're an individual, you couldn't take exactly what they did. But so the name of your business pays tribute to your mother and that generation that passed on so much to you, and yet you're taking it with what you need to do in your own life and your own time and this generation.
Absolutely.
I just love that. It's very inspiring, and I think we're all just so blessed to hear it. It is an Al-Baraki. We're almost out of time, so just a couple of final questions for you. One of them is, we have all heard the phrase, everything happens for a reason. A lot of people live their life guided by that. And as I hear your life story with all of the roots in Lebanon, the early childhood in Ghana, the coming to the Albany area, your parents starting a restaurant and having the business shaped and sculpted by forces beyond their control, a fire in the restaurant next door, things that have ebbed and flowed. Your mother, for some reason, getting off at the Coxsackie exit of the thruway and being led to what became Simone's Kitchen. Do you believe that everything happens for a reason? Or do you think that it's a little more random than that, or there's a little more kind of open-endedness? What are your thoughts about that phrase that so many people live by?
So I think maybe I would approach this more from an entrepreneurial perspective, which is that it's your responsibility to create that reason. So it's through your vision, through your sort of open-mindedness and your positive interpretation of what happened, no matter what it was, whether it's something challenging or something good, you can then learn the lesson from a particular thing, a set of experiences or a lifetime of experiences, and utilize that to create something valuable. And so, I would say it's oftentimes when something does happen, oftentimes when we say everything happens for a reason, sometimes we're talking about some of the hardships that we endure. I would say that it's more of an active rather than a passive approach that I have to that. And I would say I would say what is the thing that I can take from this lesson or experience and use it to continue growing and creating value.
I've never heard anyone say that we create the reason, and that's powerful. Yeah, it's powerful. I so appreciate that perspective. Last question for you today. What for you has helped you endure through the twists and turns of your life journey on two continents, but also in the business since 2018, and then being rocked by coronavirus and having to find your way during unprecedented times? What in the midst of all that helps you endure? What's your key to that virtue of endurance?
Sure. I think that I wouldn't be the first to realize that a lot of the accomplishments or rewards in life really have and derive their meaning from the struggle and the process that it takes to get there. And for me, realizing, especially when my heart's in the right place, and especially when I'm, this goes back to being value driven, and I'm doing something with good intentions. For me, it's not hard to come to terms with the struggle or the energy that it takes to accomplish something. I think ultimately, when we accomplish something and we receive a particular reward or outcome, I think all the value of that reward or outcome is from the steps that we took to get there. So when I am enduring, when I am trying and putting in effort into a particular thing, I oftentimes make sure that I'm aware of that fact so that I'm enjoying the struggle or seeing it in a very productive way that makes it very easy to handle, much easier to handle than not having that perspective on it. And, ultimately, I think you find that when things are sort of handed down to you, or when you receive things easily, right? If you just hit the lottery, or you just receive something that you didn't feel that you put enough into to earn. There's many people that enjoy those things. Of course, there's many people that will hit the lottery and go out and do all the things that they wanted to do in their life. But I think you will find that it's much more superficial in that sense, and that the things that are most meaningful to us, the rewards and the outcomes that are most meaningful to us, involved a lot of struggle and endurance to get to. And so on realizing that, I always find myself thinking about that sentiment when I am going through a struggle or have to go through a period of endurance, and that has fueled sort of all of the effort that I put into everything that I do.
How helpful. Yeah. If in the moment, as we're struggling, some would even use the word, not to be dramatic, but suffering, in the lowercase s version of it, as we suffer through the struggle of uncertainty, if we can in that moment say, this is money in the bank, so to speak, for my dream. This is an investment. This is what makes it worthwhile. This is learning that will be used. What a gift that is. What a gift that is.
Absolutely.
So I'd like our listeners to take just a second before we conclude to just savor some of the things that we shared today. This has been a really big blessing in the richness of the content of what we've shared. So I'd like to just take a second so that we can savor it, cling to it, much the way we would a dish of wonderful Lebanese flavors, which is one of my favorite ways to spend a day. Let's just take a second and consider some of the things that we've heard and savor them. How about that journey for the Chedrawee family from Lebanon to Ghana to the United States? What about that spoke to your family's history? Whatever it was that brought you to this country, what was it that allowed your ancestors to have the stamina, the endurance to bring you here? What are the unique contributions or fingerprints that you're putting on your dream right now? What are the things that you are able to sculpt into the dream that maybe was handed on to you incompletely, and now your job is to complete it? Bashir told us that he felt the leaders of our society missed an opportunity in the midst of trying to protect us to also encourage people to use the momentum they had found to change their lifestyle for the healthier, to make their immune systems the first line of defense against illness. What are some missing opportunities that might be going on right now in your life or in my life that we can pay attention to and not let pass us by? As Bashir said, he doesn't feel that he's written a book yet that young people can take a page out of, but he has written some chapters in the life story that will become his book. How do you feel that your path is a bit like a flashlight shining in the forest, not yet able to see the final destination, but knowing that as long as you have a vision, as long as your values are intact, you don't need to have all the answers? How can you find value in the uncertainty and in the struggle? Bashir Chedrawee, we are so grateful to you. Thank you for taking this time with us. Thank you for sharing the story of Simone's Kitchen and your journey up to this point. We are so excited to journey with you toward the fruition of this great goal. Thank you for your time with us today.
Thank you, Father Scott. It was my pleasure, and thank you for all of the love and support that you've provided us with as well.
With joy, with joy, with joy, and with garlic sauce. And thank you to all of our listeners. May God bless you all.